We're so glad you're joining us today for this presentation about the electric vehicle basics as a part of National Drive Electric Week this year. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Micah Diamond, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator at Clean Fuels Michigan. And I'll introduce Clean Fuels Michigan in a second, but I'll also let Jane introduce herself and go over some information about the technical side of Zoom.
I know what you're talking about, yeah. Thanks so much, Micah. Hi, everyone. Let me let everyone in from the waiting room here. So Micah's going to lead off our webinar today, and she'll be your main moderator and presenter. I'm here behind the scenes to support with any technical support that you need. So my name is Jane McCurry. I'm listed as a host. So if you need anything, please come find me. My name is Jane McCurry, and I'm the Executive Director of Clean Fuels Michigan. Micah's going to introduce our coalition, and we're all really excited to have you here with us today. This meeting is being recorded. You should have heard kind of that notification as you jumped into the meeting, but just want everyone to know this will be recorded and available for you to come back and see after the meeting. So if you don't mind staying muted while the presentation is going on, just to make sure that we don't have any feedback during the presentation, that would be excellent. You can unmute later in the meeting during our question and answer period if you'd like to answer a question or ask a question of me and Micah. So that said, there will be a question and answer period. Write down your questions. You can shoot them in the chat or just write them down and then raise your hand during that question and answer period to ask your question. Use the chat to introduce yourself as well. This is meant to be a dialogue as much as possible. So if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, please feel free, have discussion in the chat while Micah's giving her presentation. And we really look forward to the conversation today. And happy National Drive Electric Week.
Thank you, Jane. And for those of you that are just popping in, welcome. This is a presentation on the electric vehicle basics, and my name is Micah. All right, so let's get started. I'm first going to introduce to you what Clean Fuels Michigan is. And we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan trade association, and our goal is to accelerate the transition to clean transportation. In Michigan, we advocate for the suite of alternative fuels, including biofuels, hydrogen, propane, natural gas, and electric vehicles, which will be our focus for today. Our vision is a bright, prosperous, and sustainable Michigan that's a national leader in clean fuels. All right, so you may have noticed that I said Michigan a couple times. So we're going to start with a little interactive activity. And you can actually, using some of Zoom's new features, you put a stamp where you are joining us from today in Michigan. And if you're not from Michigan, that's okay. Or joining us from Michigan, you can just type where you're from. And so the instructions for how you can actually put your stamp on the screen. So there's going to be a bar on the top that says Micah Diamond is sharing her screen. There's an option right to the right of that. And you can click options and then click annotate. And you should have an option that says stamp, and feel free to put your stamp on wherever you're joining us from today. Awesome, looks like you're figuring it out. Cool, I'm glad we're joining from across the state, and looks like a couple from outside of the state. Cool, Arizona, nice. I guess I should have included a map of the US, not just Michigan, but. All right, cool. Is anyone else still trying to figure out the stamp thing? Are we good? Cool, we see North Carolina, Lake City, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Plant City, Florida. Cool. Well, welcome, guys. I'm glad you're joining. I have another little interactive activity right on the next page. So let's see, I should be able to clear the screen so we can start over. So the next interactive activity is, do you drive an EV? So here you can likewise stamp where you fit best. And it's okay, whatever side of the spectrum you're on, we are glad that you're joining us today. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited that we are kind of all across the spectrum here, from EV drivers to people who want to learn more. I'm very excited to talk to you guys today, and we can hopefully share ideas too. Okay, are we all good here? All right, let's get started on some presentation about electric vehicles. I'm going to clear the screen so we can move forward. Okay. All right, so just starting off with the basics, how do electric vehicles work? Instead of an internal combustion engine, electric vehicles have an electric motor, and this is powered by a large battery pack. In electric vehicles, there's no engine, no transmission, and no tailpipe, which is pretty cool for it being a car, you know? All right, so now let's talk about the range of an electric vehicle. So the range is the number of miles that a vehicle can go on a single charge. And so now with new innovation and the range is actually increasing and becoming even more convenient for drivers. Most new passenger vehicles can reach 300 miles per charge. This is pretty cool and is pretty comparable with internal combustion engine cars or vehicles. And I actually saw an article last week that there is a new Lucid Air, which is like a luxury vehicle, that it's an electric vehicle, and they actually have a range of 520 miles. So that's pretty cool, and that's a pretty big range. All right, so from there, what do you do when your range runs out? Well, that's a pretty good segue into this conversation. Instead of going to a gas station like an internal combustion engine vehicle, you need to charge your vehicle. So here's some information about charging, and it's not quite the same as refueling at a gas station. Charging can be as simple as plugging into an outlet. And this is what level 1 charging looks like. You can plug it into maybe a regular outlet that you have on the outside of your house, or maybe in your garage. And this is the standard outlet that's in homes and buildings. And this can give you 2 to 5 miles of range per hour. If you're looking for more charging in a smaller amount of time, level 2 charging requires installation of charging equipment by a qualified electrician. And this can give 20 or more miles of range per hour. And this is a standard in homes, workplaces, and also some public chargers are level 2 chargers. And then the third type of charging is DC fast charging. And this requires high-powered and specialized equipment, but it gives 60 to 100 miles of range in just 30 minutes. And so as you can imagine, this is very common in locations like high traffic corridors and public charging locations. And this is what you would likely need if you're going on a road trip and you need to charge up on the way. All right, so now let's look at Michigan and some public charging across the state of Michigan. Here is a map of public charging in Michigan, and this is a map of level 2 in DC fast chargers across the state. You can actually use this site. It's on the Department of Energy's Alternative Fuel Locator, which, well, this is a tool I can send out to you guys after the meeting with the recording. We'll send you guys some tools that are helpful in thinking about electric vehicles. And you can filter with these different things over here. You can see that there's 739 level 2 and DC fast chargers across the state of Michigan. And you can actually, using this tool, you can select the state or region you're looking at. You can even look at the whole United States. You can select which type of fuel you're looking at. You can look at DC fast chargers, level 2, and you can also look at the access that you want to look at, like if it's public or private charging. Yep. So now I'm actually gonna show you a map of the DC fast chargers in Michigan. And this is the same, similar to the previous slide that I just showed you map-wise, but the only thing I changed is that the type is just the DC fast chargers and not level 2 and DC fast chargers. And there are 148 DC fast chargers across the state of Michigan that have public access. All right, now we're gonna look at some financial savings that are associated with driving electric. All right, so we can see that there's a range of financial savings associated with driving electric, just looking at this slide, but we're gonna go a little bit deeper. There's no oil changes, spark plugs, or exhaust systems in electric vehicles, and so they have fewer moving parts, and this requires far less maintenance. There's also some reduced operating costs because electricity is much less expensive than gasoline, and the prices are also much more stable than gasoline. Plus, electric vehicles have fewer parts, so this requires less maintenance, like I just mentioned. Electric motors are much more efficient than gas engines. Think about how much energy is wasted as heat coming off an internal combustion engine vehicle. Also, there's things like regenerative braking that recaptures energy when the vehicle is slowing down. So this is actually helping the vehicle keep its charge. There's also, since there's fewer parts, like I just mentioned before, electric vehicles break down less and they have excellent warranties and they're expected to outlast internal combustion engine drivetrains. So the diagram that I have on the screen right here is a comparison between the 5-year cost of ownership for the Toyota Camry and the Tesla Model 3. And these are comparable vehicles with the major difference being that Tesla is electric and the Camry is not. We can see that the 5-year cost of ownership for the Tesla Model 3 is around $30,000. While the Toyota Camry SE, the Toyota Camry XLE, and the Toyota Camry XSE all range from $35,000 to around $40,000 for the 5-year cost of ownership. We can see that it really does make a big difference, the maintenance cost and the fuel costs over the years. And I'm actually going to show you some tools in a couple slides that can help you compare maybe a current vehicle that you have to an electric vehicle and some of the fuel savings that are associated with that. All right, but now I'm going to jump into some of the environmental benefits associated with driving electric. Studies do show that the life cycle emissions for electric vehicles are less than for the internal combustion engine vehicles. And according to this chart or map that you see on the screen, in Michigan, driving an electric vehicle is equivalent to the emissions of driving a 54 miles per gallon car. And I don't know if you're familiar with the miles per gallon. I'm going to assume you are because most people have or been around the internal combustion engine vehicle, but the average mile per gallon in Michigan is actually around 25 miles per gallon. So you can see that with electric vehicles, it's much more emissions efficient to choose an electric vehicle. And then there's also no tailpipe emissions. So imagine, I'm sure you guys know the smell of a diesel school bus. I certainly do, and it doesn't smell great. So imagine if you're biking behind that diesel school bus versus biking behind a electric school bus. You can imagine that the emissions are much cleaner and much safer with the electric school bus or even just electric vehicles in general. All right, I'm gonna keep on going. And so you may be wondering, okay, this all sounds great, but where do you start? Well, you can talk to EV owners, and the great thing is there's a lot of EV owners in this call, so hopefully we'll have time for a conversation later, which I'm sure we will. You can also test drive a vehicle at your local dealership. I would recommend calling the local dealership before to make sure that they have what you're looking for in stock, but then you can go there, you can drive the electric vehicle, or even attend another National Drive Electric Week event that's also a ride and drive. And then these are some of the tools that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about financial savings. You can compare an electric vehicle to your current car at this website. It shows you pretty much all the different things you could compare about the car, including the financial savings that are associated with it. And then the second tool or the second link that I have on this page is you can see how much you can save on fuel. I was actually clicking through this site earlier, and you can click the like how many miles you drive a year, what your price range would be, and just personal preferences about what you would need for a vehicle. And it would show you how much you could save if you switched to an electric vehicle in just fuel savings. So I think these tools are pretty cool, and I can include them in an email to you guys later with the recording. All right. Continuing on, here's a page of frequently asked questions that we often get, and it's okay if you have other questions because we will answer them later. But here's some frequently asked questions for electric vehicles. So I think one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, what happens to the batteries and what if the batteries go bad? So it takes an immense amount of energy for a battery to run a car. And this battery, even when it can't be used to run a car anymore, can be used for other things such as powering a refrigerator or powering other things that don't take quite as much energy as an electric vehicle. And right now, research is being done for uses of how to recycle these batteries. And then also, if you're worried about if your battery does go bad, in the United States, the batteries that are sold in the electric cars are covered under warranty for at least 8 years or 100,000 miles. Actually, some manufacturers actually hold it warranties for more than 8 years, such as Kia, their warranty is for 10 years, while Hyundai, it goes a step further, and they actually have lifetime coverage on their batteries. So this is something that shouldn't be a primary concern. All right, so another frequently asked question is, what options are available today in electric vehicles? So they come in all shapes and sizes. There's SUVs to small passenger cars to pickup trucks. And there's also options for larger vehicles such as light and heavy duty vehicles. And like I mentioned before, there's school buses even that are electric. All right, so you may be wondering, why do people like driving an EV? Well, this is kind of a conversation that I've mentioned a couple times already. There's easier maintenance, fuel costs are less, and then there's also the environmental benefit consideration. And also, they're a lot quieter than internal combustion engine vehicles. But this is a good question that we can talk about later with the EV drivers. All right, so are there other people in Michigan driving EVs? The answer to this question is yes. Besides for the people on the call, there's also EV drivers groups. I listed them on the slide right here. There's the Michigan EAA, the Michigan Tesla Motors Club, there's the West Michigan EV Enthusiasts, and there's more EV drivers that aren't even in these groups. So yes, the answer is there are people driving EVs in Michigan. And you also may be wondering, what if your EV needs maintenance? Well, there's a lot of maintenance shops in Michigan that can work with EVs, and this is something that's actually being addressed. And I know there's a lot of training going on for more technicians and maintenance shops to have people that can work with electric vehicles. All right, so you may be wondering, maybe right now isn't a great time for you to buy an electric vehicle. Well, that's okay, because there's more that you can do than just purchasing an electric vehicle to help. You can encourage your local school district to switch to electric school buses. You could also encourage your local city fleet to switch to electric vehicles. You can maybe even write your state government, senators, or representatives about expanding charging infrastructure if maybe you're concerned about the charging that's available in the state. Or maybe you work for a business that you would like to switch the fleets over. So there's more that you can do than just passenger electric vehicles. All right, so that's all I have for right now. We're gonna switch to a time for question and answer.
So folks, if you want to put your questions in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand function on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, there should be a reactions button, and you can raise your hand if you'd like to come off mute and ask a question, and we'll call on you. Micah, there has been a few questions in the chat that our attendees have done an awesome job at responding to. But maybe we could tell the audience a bit more about how auto insurance rates compare. And I can take that unless you wanna go for it.
That would be great if you could take that. Thank you.
Yeah. So we had some anecdotal evidence from one of our attendees in the chat that their auto insurance went up about $5 a month. And I'd say that's my experience too. EVs tend to be a bit more expensive than a comparable internal combustion engine vehicle. And so the insurance will likely go up just a bit as well. There's also just less data on electric vehicles for auto insurance companies to use to create their rates with. So I think you can expect to pay just a bit more in your insurance, but that should be more than offset by your fuel costs and maintenance cost savings. Travis, do you want to answer or ask your question?
Yes, I got a couple of questions.
Sure, go ahead. Travis, if you're talking, you're on mute again. Okay, we'll come back to you. Let's go to another question in the chat here. Micah, do you want to talk about how EVs hold up in cold weather?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I couldn't hear the whole question.
Sorry, how do EVs hold up in cold weather?
Okay. Actually, do you mind taking that question as well?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so vehicles are less efficient in the winter. As Michiganders, I think we all know that. It takes a lot of energy to heat the cabin of your vehicle. And so just like internal combustion engines, electric vehicles require more energy in the winter. Batteries really like to be at a consistent kind of room temperature. And so they have to work harder to power your vehicle in the winter. And so you can expect your range to go down during cold weather. I think it depends on the vehicle and what their battery management system is like. But you can expect that your range to go down anywhere from maybe 20% to a bit more when it's really cold out. EV owners, if you want to throw in the chat what your experience has been, I think that would be really helpful. The other thing I'll say is EVs have a really low center of gravity. The batteries are heavy and they're typically stacked along the bottom of the vehicle. And that low center of gravity can help with better traction and control when the weather's slippery and snowy. So I haven't had any problems driving EVs in snow from kind of a traction perspective. But again, EV owners, throw your experience in the chat too. Micah, have you seen a question that you want to tackle in the chat yet? You want me to throw you one?
Yeah, you can. I'm still scrolling. I'm not
sure. How about thank you all so much for participating. There's so much discussion here. How about hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrids and hybrid vehicles? The question is, please comment on hybrids.
Okay, so hybrid vehicles are actually, you can charge them, but they also do take gasoline. So I guess that's kind of the definition, but going from there, it's better and the emissions are better than just internal combustion vehicles, but it also is more of a safety net if you don't have charging always available. I don't know what else, Jane, would you want to comment on hybrid vehicles?
Yeah, so I think there's a few ways that people think about hybrids. When I hear hybrid, I think about like your Toyota Prius. So vehicles that have an electric drivetrain, but don't actually plug into the wall. And those are really great fuel efficient vehicles. You also have your plug-in hybrid, which has a plug into the wall and a gas tank. So you can use electricity and gasoline. And those are really awesome vehicles for a few reasons. The first is that they typically have enough range that your regular day-to-day driving can be done with a fully electric drivetrain. And then you have that gas backup if, say, it's really cold out and your range goes down, or you're doing a road trip. So again, it's an awesome way to get the benefits of an EV and that internal combustion engine. You're typically not going to get the same, all of the benefits of the fuel and maintenance cost savings, because you still have to get oil changes and do all the regular maintenance that a combustion engine requires. But it's a really awesome way to kind of dip your toe in the EV waters by looking at a plug-in hybrid vehicle. Rachel asked, sounds like EV technology is improving rapidly. And Rachel, you're right. Would I be better off buying an EV once the technology has matured a little bit more and maybe there will be lower price options? I would say maybe. I think that's a very personal question. I think, there are folks on the call who I'm sure are interested in the latest and greatest technology. They're on the list to get the iPhone 13 right now, or maybe they went to the Apple store like Micah this weekend and already picked it up. And if that's you, then I think an EV is probably for you right now. If you're someone who, has a large family and you go on road trips all the time and you're not ready to make that behavior change right now, I think that's totally okay. And you can wait for more models to come out in the next few years that may be a better fit for you and your family. I think it's a good point. Prices are coming down rapidly. There will be, plenty of new makes and models available in 2 years that aren't on the market right now. So I think that's a reasonable approach to take. I also think that there are vehicles that make sense now, and you can start cashing in on those fuel savings if there's a car that fits your lifestyle. So I don't think that there's a wrong approach, and just the fact that you're thinking through what would fit is an awesome first step.
Right, and the only thing that I would have to add to that question is that right now there are some tax incentives and other things that might not be here in a couple years. So if right now that's something you really want to take advantage of, so maybe you would consider more right now. But if you would rather wait for the technology to be a little bit more advanced or fit your needs a little bit better, that's also an understandable option.
Yeah, Mike, on that note, Travis asked, are we going to see more incentives as we see a larger push for EVs?
Well, we're hoping so. There's a couple bills in the national legislature and then also in the state legislature that we're hoping will be proposed this fall and throughout the next year. So there's definitely a huge possibility that will happen. There's obviously some politics that have to happen first. So there's a chance, and there's a lot of federal funding that's being proposed for these topics, but nothing completely concrete as of right now.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. There are tax credits for the purchase of a new electric vehicle, as long as it's not a GM or a Tesla model. And that's just a factor of the way that the legislation was written. Those vehicles no longer qualify. And that tax credit is up to $7,500, I believe. And that can be rolled into a lease as well if you're leasing a new electric vehicle. And then there are also tax incentives on the installation of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So homeowners can get a tax credit of up to 30% of the cost to purchase and install an electric vehicle charger on your property, which is a really great incentive as well that you can talk to your tax professional about. And then as long as we're on the incentives question, I know there was something in the chat about the consumers Power My Drive rebate. I'll throw that link in the chat again, as well as the link to DTE's electric vehicle charging incentive program. So basically, no matter who your utility is in Michigan, there's likely an incentive available. So reach out to your utility or check out their website, and I'll throw 2 of those links in the chat here. Micah, there's been a question asked here twice about the cost to use public charging stations. Did you want to take that?
I mean, I have a couple comments on it and you can expand further. The cost on the public charging stations, I mean, like at a gas station, like you're gonna have to pay for what you use. Usually there's some public charging stations where it is free, and like I'm pretty sure at Meyer, if you're an employee there, you can charge for free, but like you're gonna have to pay for usually the charge, but likely if you need it, you're probably gonna be willing to pay. But the cost is considerably much less than filling up your car with gasoline. But I'll let Jane take that from here.
Mike, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's likely going to have an expense to use the service. However, it will be less than refueling with gasoline. And typically the charging station host or the charging station owner decides what that price will be. You can use an app like PlugShare to, plan out your route. If you're taking a road trip to the UP or, around the country, there are apps available so you can plan out your route and see how much those chargers will cost when you get there too, if you want to know in advance. Awesome questions and great discussion, everyone. Thank you so much. Travis, I see you still have your hand up. Did you want to try to chime in, or did you ask your question in the chat already? Okay, I think Travis put his question in the chat here. Thanks, Travis. I see your message. Mark brings up a good point in the chat. Oops. Okay, heard some feedback for a second. About Harley dealerships having chargers for free, not super fast, but that reminds me that there are other electric mobility options than just an electric vehicle too. You can get an electric motorcycle, there are electric mopeds, electric bicycles. So it's a pretty cool industry to be looking into and using electric mobility in ways other than just a passenger vehicle. Micah mentioned school buses during her presentation. There are electric school buses and electric transit buses in Michigan, and we would love to see those deployed more too, so that we're not as car dependent, although an EV is a great option for many people as well. Josh just put another question in. Has there been a push for local only use vehicles, such as postal service vehicles, instead of the existing internal combustion vehicles?
I can take a stab at that question. Actually, President Biden did set a goal for all, I guess, how do you word this? Like local, like fleet vehicles that are owned by I guess actually his mandate was about federal fleets, but the goal was for those to become fully electric by 2030, I believe. So there is a push for these vehicles that are owned by either municipalities or the federal government or local governments to be switching to electric or starting the transition at least. I guess specifically for Postal Service, I don't know, but maybe Jane does. But I know there is a push, and it's starting to be a conversation, at least on local and federal government levels.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a big advocacy push to transition last mile delivery vehicles to electric. It makes a lot of sense from an air quality perspective. If you think about the Amazon and the post office trucks and the UPS trucks that are driving down your street every single day, emitting harmful pollution, they have a fixed route that makes it really easy to electrify them because you know exactly how many miles they're going to be driven each day, and they come back to a central depot where they can be charged. And there are a number of electric delivery vehicle companies actually in Michigan, developing vehicles that can be used for that use. So yes, there is a push. I think the federal government is working on setting aside funding to actually purchase electric post office vehicles through their whole funding process this fall. So we're eager to see how that turns out and hopefully get some more electric delivery vehicles in Michigan and across the country. Great question. Yes, Mark, thank you so much. Reminder that Amazon purchased tons of delivery vehicles from Rivian. Let's take maybe one more question, and then Micah has a few more activities for us. Micah, do you want to touch on the cost to install a level 2 charging station in someone's home?
Yeah, so there is going to be a cost. I mean, you have to have an electrician come and install the equipment. And then you will have to pay for the electricity that you're using through your local utility. But again, this cost is going to be less than the cost of gasoline that you would be using to refuel your car. Jane, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's great. Yep, there will likely be a charge. What's awesome is it's becoming less and less expensive. For example, if you purchase the new Mustang Mach-E, it comes with a level 2 charger, and you just have to call an electrician to come out and put in that 240 volt plug. So you didn't have to buy the charging station. You just have to get that plug put in your garage. And then again, consult with your utility. They likely have a program to help you install a charging station and offset some of that cost too. And I am going to put those links in the chat. I'm working on that now. Awesome. Keep throwing your questions in there. Micah is going to move on, but if we have any time at the end, we can try to answer a few more.
Yes, for sure. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And what you're going to see, I think you can see it. Go to menti.com if you can do that either from your phone or, and you can enter the code 4288 or 3009, or you could use this QR code that you're seeing on the screen, and it's going to take you to this website called Mentimeter, but it's for a little interactive activity. So if you could go to that site for me. Once you get there, okay, I see people are starting to get there. There's 5 people. I'll wait a little bit longer. I guess we could get started because the instructions are going to stay on the screen, just on the top here, menti.com, use the code 42883009. Okay, so my question for you guys are, what are the most attractive benefits of EVs to you? So, so you can actually, I think you should be able to just type in your answer and it should pop up on the screen. So when you type your answer, so savings, cool. And you can type in whatever you want for your answer and it'll pop up on the screen. And then the more common answers are going to become bigger. So cool, lower cost, environment, quieter, cleaner. Awesome, no emissions, instant torque, technology, power, efficiency. Very good answers, everyone. Keep them coming. Should be about 20 more. Cool, affordable, fast. All right, so it looks like they slowed down, but this is just, I thought it would be a cool activity to kind of show the benefits, but also give you a little bit personal perspective of what some people value and what can be really helpful in making the decision. All right, so now I think we have some time to hear from EV drivers, or we can go back to some questions, but let me stop sharing this.
Okay, there was a few questions in the chat asking what a good vehicle, what vehicle would I be interested in? And so I think it would be great to hear from some EV drivers on the call. If you want to raise your hand and tell us what car you drive and why you chose it and what you like about it, or anything else that you think would be relevant to share. Go ahead and raise your hand. Arthur, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, hello. I drive a BMW X5 45E. It's a plug-in hybrid, and it was a way to slowly move from a combustion engine to electric vehicle technology, but still have the ability to make longer trips as I do. And the areas that I make those trips are not always so easy to find plug-in stations, which hopefully is something that'll improve in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share?
I can share. My name is James. We recently also bought a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. We have a Volvo XC90. And that was mainly due to the fact that my wife and I both have cars that are well over 100,000 miles. We were looking to make the transition into battery electric vehicles, but the inventory was just too low, I think due to, I don't know if it's semiconductor shortages, chip shortages, or whatnot. So we found some good incentives on the Volvo. We do use it obviously around town and has a pretty minimal range on battery electric, but we find that it helps while I search for a more permanent fully electric vehicle, and that also suits our needs for size and family. So inventory has been an issue for us in terms of finding the right battery electric vehicle, pure battery electric vehicle.
Yeah, James, thanks for sharing. I know the chip shortage and other kind of supply chain issues have been rampant across the whole auto industry, not just EVs, but it's good to hear that you found a solution that works for you for now. Jamie, do you want to share?
Yeah, we started off with a Chevy Bolt, and that was our first jump into electric car, but then we quickly realized it just wasn't big enough, because my sons do travel sports and hockey sticks and stuff like that. So we ended up trading that in and getting we were between a Tesla Model Y and the Ford Mach-E. And we were able to find the Mach-E as a demo dealer and got a really good price on it. And I know lots of people are still waiting for theirs or whatever, but we just kind of happened upon it. But it's more SUV-ish, and it has just a little bit more space for our stuff, and it's just a little bit more comfortable than the Bolt. But I love it, and we get looks all the time of people staring as we drive by.
That's great. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. Debashis?
Yeah. Yeah, call me DB.
Okay.
I moved to a Tesla Model Y last Thanksgiving from a BMW 5, and I have never looked back. I have 12,000 miles on it since last November, and thanks to the Tesla charging network, I'm driving that car everywhere. I've been to Chicago. My son studies in Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana University. I have been using that car extensively to travel there and back and all over town, of course. But the big difference for me in making that choice was really the Tesla charging network, which makes it really absolutely seamless. You don't have to look for any charging stations. The car automatically directs you to it. And, dead of the winter, as well as, obviously summer, right? I've been traveling there and it's been no problem at all.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. It's definitely one of the main reasons I think people choose Teslas is because they have a whole network of charging stations already built out. Although there are charging stations being added for Teslas and for other vehicles very quickly. Those Tesla charging stations, like Mark has put in the chat, are supposed to be opening up to other cars at some point in the future. I'm not quite sure what that will look like, although you can keep your eyes out for news on that. Excellent. Would anyone else like to share their EV driving experience? I'll give you another minute to raise your hand. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. If you don't want to unmute and speak up, feel free to put your experience in the chat still as well.
Jane, do you mind if I chime in for a second?
Absolutely.
So, so I bought my Bolt in July of last year, and at the time I was living at the bottom of Texas on South Padre Island. And if anyone that has used PlugShare can take a look at a map and see that there is no charging between San Antonio and the 300 miles south down to South Padre Island, except for one charger, and it's a Harley-Davidson dealership. So, so that's, and my Bolt charges at 55 kilowatt. That's one thing I think you learn when you start getting into EVs is, your charging speed. You've got to learn to think in kilowatts. So a Bolt only charges at 55 kilowatts, where your Teslas will charge at 100, 125 kilowatts. So I had to plan my route accordingly. I knew what I was getting into when I lived down there. Of course, when I live on the island, it's just very slow driving, and I can go probably several hundred miles without charging because I'm not leaving the island and we're only just doing slow driving. So yeah, I had to stop at the Harley dealership about 20 miles out of my way to finish charging, and I would make that every time I would go back and forth to San Antonio, make that stop. But anywhere north of San Antonio, no charging issues whatsoever. I know I can easily make it to Houston and back. Well, not Houston and back. Make it to Houston, charge, come on back home after that. And yeah, I bought my Bolt a little more than a year ago and would never buy a gas car again.
Mark, thanks so much for sharing. I'm glad to hear that you like it, even though charging can be a pain sometimes. All right, Micah, take it away.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you guys all for sharing and for your questions. And I think this was really helpful. The only thing I have left to add is if you want to connect with us or learn more, I put both Jane and my contact information on the slides. And then also you can visit our Clean Fuels Michigan website to learn more about what we do, and also just to get more information. We also have a resources page, and you will be hearing from us with all the links for the tools that we have, and also for the recording. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of National Drive Electric Week.